Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm super excited you could be here because today we're talking about a topic we've never talked about before, but it's probably an easier path to business ownership, which is franchising. Specifically, we're really talking about non-food franchising, which we've never talked about here on the show. And I think this is very, 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 very valuable because it is well known that it is easier to take an existing model or an existing bit of the business and go from there than try to launch one from scratch. And I think if you're watching this, you may be somebody trying to launch a business, and we're going to give you an easier path to success than being able to try to do that on your own. And to have this conversation with us today is John Ostenson. Now, John is a top franchise consultant, investor, author, and speaker specializing in non-food franchising. Now, a CEO of FranBridge Consulting, he draws on his experience as a former Inc. 500 franchise system president and multi-brand franchisee to help clients explore business ownership. Now, through FranBridge, John connects entrepreneurs with over 600 different high-growth non-food franchising opportunities. That's like a tongue twister, by the way, non-food franchising. Okay, so non-food franchising opportunities, providing expert guidance throughout the process. Previously, he served as the president of ShelfGenie, a national franchise with over 200 different locations, and was vice president of sales at Carter's Inc. as well. Now, he's managed over $350 million in annual sales there. So needless to say, he's got a ton of experience in this. And he began his career as a consultant at Accenture, working internationally. He's also the author of Non-Food Franchising, a recognized thought leader in the franchise investment space. John earned a BBA in finance and an MBA from the University of Georgia and was named UGA's 40 under 40 list in 2014. And he lives in Atlanta area with his wife and 3 children and serves as on the board of Growing Leaders Inc. as well, and the Entrepreneurs Organization while mentoring through various nonprofits. John, you've done a lot of cool stuff. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. That's the longest intro I've had in a long time. So I'm not sure where you found all that.
It's hard to cut it in even out because when it comes to franchising, I don't think I've ever met somebody that has more experience, not just in offering franchising, but you lived it multiple different ways to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars you were dealing with.
Yeah. No, to be correct, so the hundreds of millions was when I was in the corporate world, but no, it had a very large bank of business and P&L on the franchise side at ShelfGenie, and really that experience about 8-9 years ago, it changed everything for me. So, like so many of your listeners, I spent many years in the corporate world and had a great run, and very thankful for it. But I had that desire to do something a little more entrepreneurial, and was very fortunate to get the opportunity at ShelfGenie to come in and run our home office and support all these franchisees. And that really caused me to fall in love with the franchise model. I just saw how so many different backgrounds could get plugged into business ownership through a shared system and a shared platform. And so, long story short, since then, I've acquired franchises myself on the franchisee side, and I started the consulting practice about 6-7 years ago, and love helping others do the same.
So what do you think between building or buying a business versus franchising? What's the benefit of franchise?
Absolutely. So I do get that question often. ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, is a big thing out there, and everyone's out there looking. There's a lot of content around that. That could be a great proposition, but here are the case studies that I hear every single day, multiple times a day. People come to me and say, "Hey, John, we've been looking for an existing business for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We've been out there, and we've been under LOI multiple times. Due diligence fell through, or something couldn't come to terms." And then they come to me and say, "What about franchising? And maybe that makes sense. I hadn't thought about it previously, or I associate it with just fast food." And one thing I point out to them is, there's risk to anything, right, in business. But with an existing business, you are inheriting someone else's customer base, someone else's team. And whenever that happens, there could be some changes, versus what you anticipated. So you paid a premium for the business and thinking everything was going to stay the same. And there can definitely be good opportunities out there, but oftentimes people don't kind of think about the risk associated on that side. And then they come to franchising and say, wait a minute, so it's a proven model. I get to pick my team. I get to put my thumbprints on the business from day one. And, I get a playbook. I get to go, there's already product market fit established. It's all about going out and executing. And, one thing that oftentimes gets overlooked is, it sounds cliche, but you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And logically, you think, oh, yeah, I've got a franchisor on the sideline and their support team supporting me. You also have a community of other franchisees. It's almost like a mini mastermind of people that are running the same business as you, learning daily, exchanging best practices. And so that whole community aspect oftentimes gets overlooked, but is important as well.
Yeah, a lot of benefits and all real pain points for starting a business and being able to test a concept to even see if it's viable, let alone get it to a point where it is viable, growing and scaling. Sounds like you can also make money a lot faster this way than trying to go out and acquire, which is a real problem. I mean, my best friend bought a business a couple years ago. Man, it was a nightmare. 2 year process to even find a business to buy. A lot of work went into it to be able to get it done. What did you focus on non-food franchising? Out of curiosity, the only person I've ever heard from or talked to that's actually focused on that niche.
Yeah, when I say food, people think franchise, right? I mean, the F word gets associated that way, franchise. We've got nothing against the food guys. I know a lot of them, respect them, we support them. Some of them can do very, very well. However, at the end of the day, for most people, myself included, there's just easier ways to make money, in my opinion. And some of these opportunities we work with require fewer employees, less operating hours, less capex investment. Typically higher margins because you don't have the food waste, right? And they're also less susceptible to consumer whims. Certainly if you own 80 Wendy's, you're sitting pretty. But a lot of these are newer businesses and industries that aren't fully proven. So frozen yogurt, I joked that Froyo was big until it wasn't, right? Think about all the frozen yogurt places you had in the neighborhood that are no longer there. People's tastes change at times too. So my clients tend to like businesses that are understandable, cash flowing, non-trendy, in some cases even non-sexy. Just the different niches out there that they can get plugged into that aren't going out of style anytime soon.
600 plus that you have access to that you help your clients connect with. What the heck? How do we choose? Like, how do you go through a process to narrow that down to figure out the right kind of franchise for each individual you're speaking to?
Great question. So while we work with over 600 and have those partnerships, end of the day, there's probably 50 or 60 at any given time that I feel strongest about. And again, looking through the lens of having been a franchisor, and I am a multi-brand franchisee, I'm looking at competitive advantages, financial model, what are current owners and their system saying about their experience. We're looking at the leadership team. We want to see a good blend of industry experience and franchise experience. So, once you start applying these filters combined with what our clients are looking to do, not that they're telling me what industry, because they usually don't know, and that's why we're having the conversation, but what's their background from a skill set standpoint? What role do they want to take in the business? Is it full-time or is it part-time? What do they see any needs not being addressed well there in the market? So they give me little data points, but I have such a viewpoint into so many others with similar backgrounds to them that oftentimes they don't know what they don't know. And that's where I come in to say, if I were in your shoes, here are the top 10 opportunities that are currently available in your market that I would want to explore if I were you. And here's what I like about each one. And then they'll usually narrow that down to 3 or 4 to then have a conversation with. And I'll hold their hand through this whole discovery process. And Ty, the beautiful thing is it's entirely free to work with us. I'm essentially a real estate broker, but for franchises. So we essentially get a referral fee from the brand on the back end. None of that's passed on to my clients. So it's entirely free to my clients to go through the process with us.
So what is that process? What if I'm working with FranBridge? Like, what does the process look like? I come in, I want to talk to you at FranBridge Consulting. Like, what does that process look like for me?
Yeah. So first off, many of our clients have already read the book, my book, Non-Food Franchising, by the time we get on the phone. And so we're able to start on third base and really get into more detail. But typically we would have an introductory conversation. And then as the next step, I would have them fill out a profile that takes just 2 or 3 minutes. It's very high level. And then I'll start reaching out to franchisors. Again, I know what's going on. I know which franchisors are attracting clients with similar backgrounds, which ones we feel strongly about. So I'm reaching out to a whole number of franchisors. I get the feedback from them as far as what's available. Are they looking to expand in that market? That usually narrows us down a good bit. So maybe that takes us down to 9 or 10 opportunities. And I try to provide my clients with opportunities in different industries, different price points, again, to give them some good variety. And so from there, I would then take my clients through those, let's say 10 opportunities and talk about them together. And then their goal, like I said, is to, on their end, narrow those down to a reasonable sample size to have conversations with. And what's amazing is the magic starts happening once they start having those conversations. They start to crystallize in their mind the characteristics they like or don't like in a business. And they're constantly sharing that with me. And it may be that we get a little ways down the road, a couple of weeks, and I say, hey, we didn't look at these other 2 opportunities, but given the feedback that you're sharing with me, let's now take a look at those. So My preference is to get the ball in play. Let's start having real conversations because that's where again the magic starts happening versus just sitting on the sidelines and hypothesizing around businesses.
I've asked you this question, but I want to dig a little bit deeper about finding the right franchise for a client. I know you're filling in the intake, the questionnaire that you had mentioned,
Yeah.
and then you talked about talking, to some of the other the franchises or franchisors out there to find the fit. Like when I'm coming in, what is the thing you're looking for in me? Are you looking at my skill set that I have? Are you looking at mainly my interest in what I'm really like to do, that I'm passionate about, or how do you like really go? This guy is the best fit for this kind of franchise.
We have some clients that say, hey, you know, it's all about the dollars. What has the most profit potential? If it's porta potties and I can drop 2 million to the bottom line, I'll take porta potties. I've got others that say, hey, we're really into the community. That's important to us. We care a little bit less about the financial side. We really want to have a passion about what we're doing and how we serve. Most people, I'll say, are probably somewhere in between, and they say, John, we're an open book. We're a blank page. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we're looking for, and that's why we're having the conversation. So again, I like to hit on a lot of different categories, home and property services, health and wellness, categories like kids, pets, seniors, things that regardless of the economy, people are always going to spend on. That's the general theme. Most people tell me, hey, John, I'd like to make the most return on my investment with the fewest number of employees. I don't even ask about that because that's a given these days. That's what everybody wants, right? And so, a little bit is from a skill set standpoint, if they were a salesperson, there might be certain franchises that we look at. If they say, hey, I'm totally adverse to sales, then we'll look at some other ones, or we'll look at ones where they can hire a salesperson to kind of fill that need. So there's a little bit of that. But again, I don't want us to get too pigeonholed in a corner because I've seen it time and time again. I just had a doctor the other day buy a restoration business. They didn't come to me saying, hey, John, I want to do water cleanup and mold remediation. But instead, they said, wait a minute, I love the financials, and that's a business that's always going to be needed. That's a business that I believe I can hire a good manager for to go off and run, and I'll support them, and the franchisor will support them. So I'd say the role in the business that they're looking to play, full-time or part-time, their background, skill sets, and then really a lot of it comes down to what's available in the market because good opportunities are moving very fast in good markets.
Give me an idea of some franchises that are out there. You touched upon some of them. Porta potties was not one I thought about, by the way. Like that's brand new in my brain. I never thought about that one. Water damage restoration. I actually do a lot of marketing for water damage restoration companies. So love that industry. Some of my favorite industries out there. What are some other just of the most of the ones that are hitting right now that are non-restaurant franchises that are out there?
Yeah, a lot of smart money is flowing into property services. A lot of PE is getting involved there and just very scalable type businesses. So everything from roofing to flooring to pool cleaning to landscaping to cabinets, dumpsters. I've got several, in the property services arena that I'm personally invested in. Health and wellness. I mean, really, that's so many people will always spend on. I just had a client that bought a business that provides infrared sauna, cold plunge, cryotherapy, red light, all those modalities under one roof on a membership model. So it complements gyms very well. Certainly, you have plenty of gyms out there. We're doing a lot of placements in in-home senior care, but while people love that space of in-home senior care, it does take a lot of employees, and so we have some say, I want exposure to that, but I don't quite want that. So I think of one that provides people that are looking to age in place with wheelchair ramps and stair lifts and retrofitting for metro mobility solutions in their home. Another one that's very consultative in the senior space where they work with those they're looking to place their parent in a nursing home. It's the first time they've ever done that. They don't know where to start, and so this person becomes a subject matter expert. They develop relationships, and then they get a placement fee with these different senior homes. So it's almost like a brokerage type role. We have one that we're excited about right now that is in the logistics consulting space. And that's kind of a unique space. I don't know any other franchises in that, but they're working with some of the large carriers out there and kind of serving as the go-between for small and medium-sized companies that do a lot of shipping. And they're able to come in and get the leverage buying of a franchise system with the carriers and negotiate better rates, bring those to market along with their technology systems. Yeah, but everything from pet grooming to, we've had clients do incredibly well with like youth soccer. There's just so many different opportunities across different industries. Certainly automotive, you'll always have, oil changes and places like that. We're not doing as much in automotive these days. I'd say the bulk of it's in those other categories, with probably home and property services being the biggest one.
And I appreciate that because there's so many things that, when you hear about non-food, it's like, I'm like, what other franchise? And then there's so many things you just mentioned. I was like, man, I never even thought about that at all. But all areas that are really well, and a lot of them are blowing up right now. It's impossible to say with 600 of the investment range, but it is, let's be honest, it's one of the biggest questions that people have on their mind. So if you had to start with a minimum of money to invest into a franchise to maximum within this range of 600, like what roughly is that to starting point to get in? Or like, if you really wanted to blow it up, you could be up here.
I'd say on the low end, lowest investment placement I've done in recent years is probably around 70,000, and that's all in franchise fees, startup cost, and working capital all built in. Largest one, I had clients buy 10 trampoline parks recently in Texas, and those are about $3 million each to, all in. So that was a big deal. Most of our clients, when you look again at your all-in investment, which the franchisor breaks out for you, your franchise fee, your startup cost, several months of working capital, all built in. Oftentimes you're in the 150,000 to 400,000 ballpark. I'd say that's a very reasonable area. Certainly quite a few on either side, but that might be a customer-facing retail business, or it might be 2 or 3 territories of a service-based business that doesn't have a physical location, but it's more out in the field. It's territory-based. There are multiple ways that people are getting involved. A small minority of my clients are using all cash, but the majority like the idea of SBA loans or other types of loans. Some will roll over their old 401k from a previous employer through what's called the ROBS program. Some will use HELOCs, but I'd say most of them are looking to leverage and use other people's money. And obviously, franchises, lending institutions prefer franchises just from a predictability standpoint.
Yeah, and that's way cheaper than I thought, by the way. Like I instantly thought, $1 million plus. Like one of my friends in high school, her and I went to prom together. She builds like the Taco Bell buildings, like not just Taco Bell, like that whole whoever that group they buy. She builds all the. It's freaking expensive, man. Like they're putting millions into the building itself. And I think about that, I'm like, geez, well, I don't even begin to know how much money it is, but it's a lot. So to talk about where you are to low to mid 6 figures, that's actually surprising to me. What about financing? Is it possible for somebody to come in and get help with financing the franchise?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say probably 2/3 of our clients do finance it. They use leverage. And so, SBA loans are fairly easy to get. If someone has a halfway decent credit history and halfway decent net worth, and by halfway decent, I mean even like 200,000 net worth or 150,000, then there are a lot of SBA programs designed to support them. So yeah, we utilize SBA loans day in, day out. That's a great way. People can always pay them back early once they're cash flowing, and certainly the interest is tax deductible. So even if someone's sitting on a pile of cash, they usually like the idea of leveraging.
What about multiples? Like, let's say I buy a franchise, I build it, I want to exit. What's the multiple on a franchise? Is it possible to compare the multiple of a franchise versus a non-franchise business to see like which multiple may be higher?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's been research done that I've seen. It's a little dated, it's a couple years old, but comparing like kind businesses in similar industries, and they showed that in most cases the franchise is traded at a slightly higher multiple than the non-franchised. And I think that resale buyer has an appreciation for the support they're going to get. There are fewer unknowns, right, in their due diligence going in, so they're willing to pay a little bit of a premium. A lot of franchise resales never hit the open market though. And the reason for that is other franchisees in the system buy them before that ever happens. It's what I call internal M&A. So, I have a lot of clients that say, hey, I'd love to buy an existing operation in franchising. I can see all that in my system, but there's really not a whole lot out there usually that's that attractive because that's already been bought by another franchisee. I've personally bought out another franchisee. I've also sold to another franchisee. So it can be a really good path both for an exit as well as for a scalability strategy.
Do you find that that's common? Like somebody comes in and they like a Chick-fil-A, because a lot of the athletes and stuff like that I see invest do. Like they have one Wendy's and they have 50 Wendy's, or the one trampoline park where they came in and had 1 in 10. Do you find that's common with once they get it down, they like it, and then they go and expand and get another franchise in that another locate? I don't know how to say it. Another location or franchise within that same. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And in some cases, they'll buy multiple out of the gate. So it gives them that path to scale over time. But other times it is that internal M&A acquiring another franchisee. Very, very, very common. Yep. Happens all the time. I like to use my client Nathan as an example. He's the largest franchisee of a 2 minute and a truck moving service. And, he started small and then started acquiring other franchisees within the system. And he's now up to, I don't know, 13, 14 markets. Does over 45 million a year in revenue. And, but he really got the systems down, learned the system inside and out, and then went out and bought up other franchisees as they were looking to exit. He also buys other franchises. So he's built an empire that's multi-brand. I've helped him in that regard. And, certainly there are financial benefits, but there's also a culture benefit. He's attracting great talent because they see the path within the company to move into other types of opportunities down the road. And he gives them a lot of responsibility, in some cases equity as well, to go run these other businesses. And it's just had a ton of success doing that.
Yeah, I don't think people listening or watching really understand the value of that, because like I'm in an industry with business credit that I can't go do roll-ups. Like it doesn't exist in my world. There's nobody out there to acquire that's really doing what we're doing. But then if you're, and I got a buddy that just exited out of the biggest like T-Mobile spinoff. Like he was buying all these T-Mobiles. I mean, just crushed it, exited like, I don't know how many, multiple nine figures, but it was big. And that's just a way to do it. You just go the same thing you could just buy and you already have the systems and expand. Yeah. And that's really hard to do with a business, but fairly easy to do, I imagine, if you're buying within the same kind of franchise.
Yeah, 100%. No, those bolt-on possibilities. So, franchising gives you optionality, right? I mean, you can get several years in and decide, hey, I think I want to try my hand at another franchise that either complements my current one, or maybe it diversifies from it, from a customer base and, back end office, personnel standpoint. Or you can, potentially acquire other franchisees within that system. So you have different, or you can go out and start a business, that's outside of franchising. So again, you're not locked in. I always encourage people, start with the end in mind, knowing the end it's going to be a little bit vague, but just kind of aspirations. Where are you looking to go? And then what's right for that next season? Because that next season is going to be a building block that propels you to do, again, have options to do multiple things.
Idea of returns, again, really hard when we're talking about 600 different ones. I get that. But I think that's interesting too, is when I look, it's so interesting how I look at mostly restaurants and franchising. I don't know why. I think that's probably why you are the non-food guy, because like when I think about it, it's what pops in my head, as you said early on. But man, I'm shocked at how little money they make, like how little the profits are on some of those franchises that are out there. I'm like, why would you even do that with so little money? Like to own an entire business and make 50K or 100K or 150K. But I guess to each his own. So is there any kind of idea of returns that somebody can make on franchises?
Yeah, certainly it's across the board. I mean, these are all small businesses end of the day, right? And but let's just say quite a few kind of in that 20% ballpark, 20% margin. So if you're, a lot of these are $1 million business. So $1 million, that's kicking off 200,000 to the bottom line. Well, your all-in investment may have only been around 200,000. That's how a lot of these models are set up. So from that standpoint, yeah, you're making a 100% return, every year, and you're building an asset that you're going to be able to sell, and you're getting tax benefits as a business owner, right? Oftentimes W-2 people don't think about the tax benefits. The whole tax code was written in favor to support small business owners and create employment. And so you can make outsized returns in a lot of cases, but the trade-off is you're putting time and effort and energy into it, right? I always say if business ownership was easy, everyone would be a business owner. It takes work, and I never want to sugarcoat that. Even with a franchise, you have a lot of support systems. You're able to kind of shortcut your way to success. It still takes a lot of work, and it takes having a good operator you put in place if it's not going to be you. So, and that's actually an interesting point. A lot of franchises market themselves as executive model or semi-passive, semi-absentee, some call it. I like to call it semi-involved, because even if you put a manager in place day one, you're still going to be involved in the business. And but it does make it doable when you've got a franchisor and their support team on the sidelines supporting that manager. They can carry a lot of that daily support water for you, so you can continue focusing on your W-2 job or what else you have going on.
And what's the difference kind of between an owner operator and then somebody that's like a semi-absentee? I don't know the difference, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that do you have people that just really want to be actively involved and other people that just want to put a manager in place and be hands off?
Yeah, we have about half and half. So the owner operator typically, say they're looking to make a jump from the corporate world and they want to run the business. They typically don't want to do that forever. So they're goal is to get in, learn the business, and then hire to replace themselves and move on to the next thing. The other half of our clients, I mean, this includes doctors, high paid W-2s that aren't going to give up their day job, but they want to get something going on the side to start building another revenue stream. And they've all got a variety of different reasons. But in that case, yeah, it is putting a manager in place, that executive model. And again, you're kind of tag teaming the management of that person with the franchisor. So if you've got a rock star in that seat, you can put in very, very little time in theory in that business. I like a lot of my clients do that. If you don't have a great person in that seat, you're going to find yourself leaning in until you do. So I just always want people to go in eyes wide open. You can have a great vehicle, you still have to have a good driver.
What are some misconceptions about franchising?
Yeah, franchising is just like every other industry in that there's great players, and then there are ones that are not as great, and the ones that are not as great are not providing the support to the franchisees, in the way that they should. So, that's where we come in to help our clients identify which are the top ones and the ones you don't want to be associated with, because they're not all created equal. So I think that would be one point. I think franchising also, I'll say not everyone should be a franchisee. Some people are too entrepreneurial and just want to put their thumbprint all over everything, and they think they're the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room they're in. But I truly believe that franchising is a better path to business ownership for the majority of people out there, where they can benefit by the support and the shared system. Some people think franchising is very, too rigid, and you certainly see this in the food space or the hotel space. It's very closely managed. However, a lot of industries within franchising, a good franchisor is going to let their franchisees have a little bit of bandwidth and a longer leash to, try new things. That's where the innovation comes from. And then, hey, if it works for them, let's bubble it up to the whole franchise system. So I'd say, the misnomer can be that it's too rigid. They're not going to let you do anything that's totally off brand that hurts the brand. But they're going to give you some leeway in most cases.
What qualities should I have to make me a really good franchisee?
Yeah. Number one, you've got to be halfway decent with people. I mean, that's just business 101. You got to be somebody people want to work with or work for. And then secondly, really the big one is just the humility to follow a playbook. And again, not to challenge everything. If there's somebody that needs to be challenged, pick your spots. But there's a reason why you're buying into the franchise system. And when I was at ShelfGenie and I saw all these franchisees across North America, our best performers were the ones that followed the system and didn't try to recreate the wheel. And so I'd say it's having the humility and the discipline to follow a system.
John, thanks for coming on with us today. I mean, this has been really eye-opening. I can't even think of anything that you haven't been so openly kind to be able to share with us. But I know in your book that we're just scratching the surface, right? There's so many things I didn't even think of to ask you that we need to cover, and anybody thinking about getting into especially non-food franchising needs to know. So where can they go? Well, people watching, what step can they take to be able to learn more?
Yeah, again, it's entirely free to work with us. So I'd like to get that out of the way. But come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com, FRAN, bridgeconsulting.com, and share your email address. There'll be a pop-up when you come to the website. Share your email address. We'll send you a free downloadable copy of Non-Food Franchising. It's about 90 pages, packed with a lot of content. It's a good first step, but certainly indicate on there as well, on that pop-up in the note space, if you'd like to jump on a call. You're happy to jump on a call with any of your listeners and get to know them a little bit better and answer their questions and talk about the process. And like I said, we like to jump into the, looking at real opportunities pretty fast out of the gate. So been able to place hundreds of clients over the last couple of years, and I would love to help in any way I can.
Sounds good. John, thanks for coming on with us today.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, Ty.
So listen, if you're watching this, make sure you go to franbridgeconsulting.com, franbridgeconsulting.com. If you go to franbridgeconsulting.com, as John said, one of the first things that happens is you see a pop-up and you're able to grab the non-food franchising book right there. And there's just a lot of great information that will give you more details and more insight on being able to break into this world. Look, it's way easier, way faster, way cheaper to come in this way than anything you're thinking about doing with acquiring or starting a business from scratch. So let's be honest, if you're going to make a wise decision, then just get educated. All you have to do is go to franbridgeconsulting.com, grab the non-food franchising book, and then at least you're educated. And I think it's going to open your eyes to say, man, Does it even make sense to launch a business? Does it even make sense to stay on this path? Or also my video just cut off because my camera just died, but this is exactly why we have backup cameras here. So then the other part of this is that you might realize that it's way easier than buying or building a business to actually go down this road. So make sure you check it out right now, franbridgeconsulting.com. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day.